Hello again, BookTube. It's Mike, and this is Raff's Reading Renaissance. Today, I want to do a reality check and just a check-in as to where I am in my BookTube journey. I've been aware, watching all the wonderful content that's created on BookTube, that several BookTubers are feeling strain in terms of either trying to keep up or coming to the point of wanting to create something and not being sure how to do it. And I think it's very important that we understand these various ebbs and flows in the human condition. We all have good days and bad days. And I have to tell you that the world, when you look at it, whether you listen to it in an Irish stew from Steve, or even if you get it more mainstream, the world, I don't think, has been more turmoiled and uncertain certainly in my living memory, and that's quite a long memory. So I think it's important to just take a moment to take stock. When I started BookTube, which was in July of 2025, I was very aware going in that my time that I could devote to both reading, not to mention BookTube video work, is very finite. I have an extremely busy day job, a very rewarding day job that keeps me and my family well watered and fed and looked after, and my 3 dogs well looked after. But it's a demanding job. It's a very meaningful job. It's a job where I feel I'm making a difference in society. And it takes a lot out of me, and many is the day that I get home late, like tonight, and at day's end, one is tired. My father used to say to me, it's totally acceptable to be tired at the end of a good day's work. But one's tired, and one might feel more inclined to some passive form of recreation, like watching BookTube, rather than the more active engagements of creating your own content. This set against whatever expectations may exist from either your wonderful subscriber base, or if you're worried about the algorithm, which I think one shouldn't be worried about, but we're all human. So things can build up. The other thing I think that maybe is a little different in my case, sitting here in the Southern Hemisphere, is that unlike all my Northern Hemisphere friends on BookTube, we don't have a big sort of annual summer holiday in August. Ours is at the end of the year, December, around about Christmas time. And of course that's now. And what that means for anyone who's in the kind of jobs I'm in, is that November is a manic period of completing everything before the mid-December virtual shutdown. So the pressure's on. This happens every year. It's nothing out of the ordinary. But what has been different for me this year is that I have both undertaken a much more assertive reading program than I've ever done in the past, which has brought enormous joy into my life. At the same time, I've taken the plunge, as you all encouraged me to do, to become an active creator in BookTube, which has also brought me immense joy and introduced me to the most wonderful community that one can imagine. Those two things are different from my past experience of this time of year. And of course, therefore, I'm feeling pressure. And I thought I would make this video as a means to share with you my process of taking stock, because I need to do it. And I thought, well, I haven't put out a video this week. I've done a fair amount of live work in the last couple of weeks through both Dr. November and a very kind invitation to appear as a guest on the show that Mark and Randy Ray do together, which was absolutely wonderful. But the clock ticks. These things all take time, and they take away from either reading time, which of course is a critical raw material to have something to say to BookTube, and of course the actual time of creating content itself. Some people may feel I'm my worst enemy, because as you know from my videos, they're not down and dirty. They're not just shoot 'em, which today's one is a little bit. not a terribly impressive, not a terribly impressive back screen behind me, and this is pretty much straight to camera. Whereas normally I enjoy and get immense creative fun out of the process of creating thumbnails that will amuse you and engage with you. And I like the editing process. I still do, no matter what anyone says about time constraints. I thoroughly enjoy the editing process of creating what I think is the best version of what I can be. So it comes down ultimately to two things. When am I going to read, and what am I going to read? Those are the two things that ultimately need to be sacred in this journey. So I need to be realistic. I need to prioritize reading over just BookTube filming. And I need to make sure that I get to read the books I want to read. Now that's a slightly delicate one, and I'm very cautious here because I don't in any way want to disparage any of the wonderful people who've guided me towards things or included me in things that have shaped some of my reading. But it does occur to me that I have in the back of my mind some ideas about things I want to do, which are not going to be brought to the front by any of the existing BookTube events that I'm aware of, things like Dickens December or Victober, etc. If I look at the ones that I'm aware of, none of them are going to specifically prioritize some of the books that I want to read. And that's a very personal thing. I sit here on the southernmost tip of Africa, so my exposure to literature in this part of the world is perhaps a little different from some of you, or indeed most of you. And that creates in itself some reading desires for me that I need to work on. I need to find the time to do it. I have watched with enormous interest, for example, the various creators who've talked about banned books. Now, if you lived through the South Africa of the last 50 years, the question of banning, censorship, and governments manipulating narratives in order to control people is such a huge subject and such a worthy subject that I have felt I need to do research, I need to do more reading, I need to do a lot more investment before I'm ready to bring to you a content creation on that subject. Because I do believe that although everybody is friendly in this community, I think when you get on camera to talk to your subscribers, you need to have something worthwhile to say, even if it's only an opinion, but it needs to be as best informed as you can. And I'll be honest, there are not a lot of South African or even African booktubers in the community that I've seen, and certainly those I've looked out are not really reading the kind of books that I am reading on my Riiff's Reading Renaissance journey. So I feel some pressure indeed. I would love to create a starter pack on South African literature. From there, I get ideas about, do you want biographies? Do you want the politics? Do you want the community? There's a whole lot of different ways to do it. And some of you have actually even mentioned this to me already. One of the questions often asked is about how does one come up with ideas for BookTube videos? And I have to say, I heard Emily say this on her live with Mark and Randy Ray the other night. It isn't a problem. The problem is time. We are bursting with ideas. I've mentioned one or two of them in a South African context, but I have got many. Many of you have reacted very kindly to my most recent one, where I did the shootout at the BookTube Corral. I mean, those ideas are just exploding in my head. I've got lists and lists and lists. What I need is more time. That's the challenge, and it's always the challenge in life. There's too many ideas, too little time. So it's about prioritizing, and that brings me back to the need just to take stock. So these are all tasks that need to be done, but they require time investment, and they also require the research in the form of actually reading. I have, and I'm not going to pull them out today, it's going to be a slightly different video from my normal reach back into the pile style, but I have got around me quite a lot of South African books, many of which were banned. I could pull out, for example, from the pile Anna Sewell's Black Beauty, because believe it or not, that was banned. The clue was in the title, you know. So there is so much still to do, but given the time where I am now, one thing I promised myself when I came into BookTube was that I came in for the joy of reading, for the joy of talking to other people who are as passionate and silly and crazy about books as I am. And I found all of that. I found it much more than I ever dreamed I would. But I promised myself that this joyful hobby and activity would remain joyful and not become a chore, not become anything like a production line where one needs to sort of churn out output at a certain acceptable rate to be successful. And I think you've probably, if you've listened to my previous videos, you've heard me say before that I'm too old and cynical to worry about the algorithm. I'll try and box clever. I try to edit my videos. I try to, where one can sensibly align your content in ways that it reaches more audience. That, of course, is fantastic, but I'm not going to prostitute the art. So in terms of going forward, and this is only a temporary thing, this is about the period between now and the middle of December, because in the middle of December it's too late. If we haven't done all the things we're supposed to do, all the work related things are calendar year-end deadlines, and that effectively means that by the middle of December everything has to be done, which is a great pressure, and it's an annual pressure, so it's nothing out of the ordinary. I'm just really going into this video to chat to my wonderful people who support me as subscribers, to manage your expectations and perhaps recalibrate mine a little bit to make sure that I'm doing the right things in the right order, so that both my real world responsibilities get done, and at the same time my BookTube joyful hobby remains joyful. And I hope that's not just for me, I hope that's for everybody. So an example of where I got it right. I mean, if I cannot emphasize enough how privileged I've felt when people have reached out and invited me to co-host events, or people have included me in live shows and things like that. It's beyond my wildest expectation, and I'm deeply humbled and deeply grateful and extremely blown away by the quality of simply wonderful people in this BookTube community. Having said that, there's one example where I think I got it completely right in terms of managing the time available, and that is the question of Victober. Now, Victober is a very clearly defined event where you read Victorian literature, and I simply took a decision to say I'm not going to do anything official in Victober, but I am going to read a Victorian novel that I've had on my TBR forever, and that was Vanity Fair. So I quietly and simply decided that during the month of October, that would be my reading. I've said many times I'm a slow reader, and to read a big chunker of 600 or 700 pages like Vanity Fair would probably take me a lot of my available reading time in October. And that's what I did, and I enjoyed it far more than I ever expected to. It was a revelation. It's a fantastic book if you haven't read it. And in fact, if you haven't read it, go and check out my video, because I made a video, a fairly deep dive video on Vanity Fair, which is available right here, if I've got that right. And the moral of the story is that that video of Vanity Fair, despite people on BookTube often saying that book reviews don't perform, has been, if not the, then certainly one of the most successful of my videos in terms of views. So there's a lesson in that, and I'm trying to make sure I absorb that lesson. So really, I don't want to keep you rambling on here forever, but the purpose of this video, truthfully, is a couple of things. One is to say thank you to all the people who have engaged with me, both as creators, as subscribers, as commenters. I'm in the odd position of having not experienced what others have mentioned of unpleasant engagements with people. I've only had one slightly strange engagement, and it was barely malfeasance. It was just weird. But other than that, it's been a completely joyful experience. So I'm very, very grateful for that. I do really want to formally appreciate the fantastic community that you all are. Thirdly, I wanted to update you on the work status and the fact that my output or productivity will definitely be low over the next couple of weeks. And to remind myself that this is a hobby, and to remind any of you out there, if you're also taking strain, just remember, this thing we do is joyful. It's a platform that has created an opportunity for the book nerds of the world to unite and engage with each other. What could be more happy and joyful than that? Let's not turn it into anything we have to worry about. It's not. It's all upside. And finally, I just want to thank you for listening and understanding while I work my thoughts through with you here. And if you're still with me after 15 minutes of this endless and unplanned and unscripted ramble, but it has been helpful to me, so thank you for that. I would just say thank you again. I hope you've enjoyed the videos I'm creating thus far, and I will be back in full steam ahead in a few weeks' time. And I want to thank you, and I hope to see you again on the other side. So, until then, thank you very much, BookTube, and bye-bye for now.